Good evening and thank you for joining us. The Thunder Bay Regional Hospital is getting a big boost for its cancer care wing.
MPP Kevin Holland announced this morning that the government will fund the addition of vital new equipment, covering the bulk of the $13.2 million cost. As Mike Lang tells us, this will substantially improve access to care and the quality of treatment for cancer patients.
Provincial government has recognized the importance and necessity of these diagnostic imaging machines for the provision of health services in Ontario, and more particularly Northwestern Ontario.
MPP Kevin Holland understands the importance of making sure that Thunder Bay Regional can support the needs of their cancer patients, since it's the only cancer center in Northwestern Ontario. With an aging PET-CT scanner and 2 linear accelerators, upgrades were needed. But thanks to government funding and other donations, just over $13.2 million will be used to add a 3rd linear accelerator and a brand new state-of-the-art PET-CT to replace the old one.
It's really important to be making these investments to improve the level of care. So our government is very committed to doing that. This is one of a series of announcements that have been made recently for Thunder Bay Regional, and I'm really pleased with the direction that the government has been taking to provide exceptional health care in our region.
It's excellent news for the residents of Northwestern Ontario, really, to be bringing a 3rd linear accelerator into our facility to be able to ensure that we're meeting the treatment care needs of patients across Northwestern Ontario and enable us to really do better treatment and diagnostics for patients with cancer.
PET-CT scanners allow doctors to easily locate cancer cells, improving the accuracy of their diagnosis, while linear accelerators are used for radiation treatment by delivering high-energy electrons to cancerous areas, destroying their cells and preserving unaffected tissues. Oncologist Dr. Margaret Anthes is thankful that the Cancer Center will be able to treat patients more efficiently while keeping them closer to home.
By increasing capacity, we'll be able to treat more patients. We'll be able to treat patients in a more timely fashion, and we'll minimize any wait times that we may have. So it's absolutely fantastic having more capacity to treat our patients.
The new PET-CT scanner can also be used to treat other diseases such as cardiac disease, as 3D imaging will make it easier for surgeons to plan and execute cardiac surgeries. The CT scanner is expected to be in service by August 2023, while the new linear accelerator is expected to be in use by December 2023. Mike Lang, TBT News.
Ontario's top doctor is urging people to wear masks in public, but Chief Medical Officer of Health Dr. Kieran Moore stopped short of issuing a mask mandate for schools, even though the strong recommendations today are aimed at protecting kids. Siobhan Morris reports.
Facing a triple threat from COVID-19, RSV, and influenza,
we need a reboot, a reminder of what will keep us safe for the rest of the winter season.
Not only to protect each other, but to safeguard hospitals, particularly ones that care for children.
We've seen the ICUs be filled to capacity for pediatrics. We've seen the community beds, the 29 hospitals across the province that have pediatric beds. Those have gone essentially to full capacity.
Ontario's top doctor says it's time to go back to basics, washing your hands, keeping up to date with your shots, and pulling your mask out of retirement.
I'm strongly recommending that all Ontarians, not just those at high risk, wear a mask in indoor public settings.
Especially around the very old and the very young.
I'm also recommending that, if possible, children between 2 and 5 wear a mask with supervision if they can tolerate the mask, and safely put it on and off.
Dr. Moore has stopped short of making masks mandatory in public, but wants you to mask up around children under 5 in private. They're most at risk to land in hospital. So if you're a parent to a young child waking up with the sniffles,
you're saying I should be masking at home?
I'm sorry, but you should. You should be doing good hand hygiene, cleaning surfaces, masking as best you can to decrease the risk to that child.
Moore says mandates could make a comeback down the road. The Liberals think there's no time like the present.
It's time for some decisive action and leadership. We need to go to universal masking in schools and on public transit.
New Democrats defer to Moore's medical expertise.
A lot of what we're seeing now in our ICUs, in our pediatric hospital with all of those 6 children, rest on the shoulders of a government that refused to act.
Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
In the absence of those mask mandates, public health officials in the western part of our region are urging people to take it upon themselves to mask up and prevent viral spread. The Northwestern Health Unit and a number of hospital CEOs sounded the alarm today about the impact of rising cases of respiratory illness, particularly on ERs and pediatric care. Lee Noonan has the story.
With waves of COVID, the flu, and RSV hitting at the same time, public health officials in the western part of the region are imploring the public to protect themselves, each other, and the healthcare system itself by wearing masks, getting vaccinated, and staying home when sick or when there's illness in the home. Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kit Young-Hoon, says the worsening situation could have drastic impacts on the area's healthcare system.
In recent weeks in our region, we have seen a rapid increase in hospitalizations and emergency department visits for respiratory illness, particularly for children. Based on this information, we are facing a potentially difficult winter season. And now is the time to take action to dampen the surge in respiratory illness that is beginning to occur.
With rates of respiratory illness only expected to increase, CEOs of 3 area hospitals spoke up about the impact it could have on hospital capacity.
We are often 1 or 2 sick calls away, either physician or staffing wise, from having to close. So very important to protect our patients and our community and our healthcare providers.
People still have heart attacks and strokes and those sorts of things, accidents and whatnot that need to be cared for. So there has to be capacity in the system to care for the normal things that go on with people outside these, enormous surges of 3, in particular, respiratory illnesses.
You're not going to get mandated, but we would ask you to seriously consider that as a way of protecting you and your families and protecting our capacity, because we do need it for people who require service. And if we get overwhelmed, there will be people who need service that won't get it. And that's what I worry about the most.
In particular, officials are concerned about the health of young children. Reset says the proportion of kids under 16 in his ER has increased from 14% last month to 25% so far in November, mostly with respiratory conditions. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The outgoing Thunder Bay City Council will have a final meeting tonight at City Hall. And besides the presentation of Community Safety Awards, the only big item on the agenda is giving the departing councillors a proper farewell. It'll be the last meeting for longtime councillors Brian McKinnon, Rebecca Johnson, and Aldo Roberto, along with Cody Fraser and Peng Yu. The city already had a formal send-off for Bill Morrow, who resigned as mayor on October 3rd, just before the election. The outgoing councillors are expected to offer some parting words. They'll also receive gifts. The new city council takes over on Tuesday, but won't officially be sworn in until November 28th.
Some good news to report for local hockey players and other users of Delaney Arena. The facility, which had to be shut down last week due to a failure in the rink's slab cooling system, is now set to reopen tomorrow following a successful interim repair. Last Thursday, city officials said rink staff noticed a significant drop in the amount of brine in the lines under the ice surface, but the problem was isolated and addressed over the weekend. The brine has been refilled and all lines were pressure tested successfully. Full repairs will commence once the ice rental season wraps up in the spring. In a media release, City Manager Norm Gale said he was pleased with how fast the problem was fixed, noting without prompt action, more ice times would have been lost. The city's Recreation and Culture Division will work with groups to reschedule ice rentals as operations return to normal.
Ontario's fall economic outlook is projecting improving deficits over the next couple of years, despite an expected economic slowdown. The government is projecting a deficit of $12.9 billion in this fiscal year, $8.1 billion in 2023, and just $700 million in 2024 and 2025. The finance minister says the government is preparing for the economy and job market to slow in response to global uncertainty, but notes the new outlook will make important economic investments.
Previous governments added almost $200 billion to Ontario's debt, and what do they have to show for it? Enough highways? No. Enough transit?
No.
More hospitals?
No.
More nurses and personal support workers?
No.
Our government, Mr. Speaker, is taking a different path. We're taking a responsible and targeted approach, making record investments in the priorities that matter to the people of Ontario.
A new homelessness report was released by Lakehead University and the Thunder Bay DSAB today. According to the document, 60% of people experiencing homelessness in the city migrated from somewhere else. Mitchell Ringos has the details.
The primary purpose of the research was to understand why so many people experiencing homelessness in the city seem to migrate from out of town or out of the province by asking 7 research questions through the process. To answer those questions, 3 methods of research were conducted, including point-in-time count, which saw 98 responses, a shelter survey, which saw 120 responses, and 17 one-on-one interviews. Faculty of Health and Behavioral Sciences Assistant Professor Ravi Gokani says the study results show that 69% of migration from neighboring districts comes from First Nation communities, with 77% of those surveyed being from Treaty 3 or Treaty 9, and that 54% of people surveyed come from neighboring districts.
The 2018 PIT count found that about 20% of people from outside of province, but the study that we did found that a majority of people were actually migrating from a neighboring district. So we find that, Kenora, Rainy River, Cochrane is where most of the people have migrated from.
The study also shows that 43% of those surveyed migrated to Thunder Bay for family, friends, or a sense of community, while 22% migrated to the city for employment or education. And with all this new data now collected, the DSAB's Ken Ranta says undertaking the process and getting the results helps them make plans going forward.
Variety of responses that we've got and the direction that it points us in allows us to work with partners both locally and throughout Ontario to look at different opportunities, not only to reduce the number of homeless in Thunder Bay, but to meet the needs of individuals where they are so that they don't leave a home situation to become homeless.
Ranta says he is presenting the information to the DSAB board later this week. For anyone wanting to know more, you can read the full report at lakeheadu.ca. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
Sioux Lookout OPP continued to investigate the sudden deaths of 3 people inside a residence in the small community of Hudson. OPP, Lac Seul Police, and EMS all responded to the call on Saturday afternoon. The 3 people were all found unresponsive and were subsequently pronounced dead at the scene. TBT News has learned the 3 deceased were all young men. Postmortems will be conducted in Toronto later this week. OPP say there's no threat to the public safety, but are asking anyone with information to contact police or Crime Stoppers.
The Transportation Safety Board has wrapped up its probe into a fatal plane crash near Sioux Lookout back in April that killed 4 people, including 2 wanted fugitives. The private plane from BC had fueled up in Dryden and was headed east when it appears to have zigzagged in the night sky and went down in the thick forest.
The aircraft was totally destroyed when it impacted the treetops. There was a wing tore off. It was there was not much recognizable at the time when we looked at it.
Police in BC confirmed one of the victims, 36-year-old Jean Larkamp, was the 2nd most wanted fugitive in the country for allegedly murdering a man in Thailand. Another victim was 37-year-old Duncan Bailey from Kamloops, who was facing charges in a different murder. The pilot was identified as 26-year-old Abhinav Handa of Richmond, BC. The TSB says Handa wasn't licensed to fly at night, and he wasn't certified to use flight instruments. Peden says that inexperience likely contributed to the crash.
If you're under visual flight rules, you're flying with reference to objects on the ground. When it gets dark and there's an absence of light, it gets extremely difficult to do that.
A group of area farmers hosted a harvest celebration and beef auction this weekend, with proceeds going to support local and worldwide hunger relief programs. The event at Fort William Historical Park featured a dinner of local food produced at farms across the region. Some of the auction items were local beef packages, and for every item purchased, an equal amount is being donated to Adult and Teen Challenge or Grace Place. Proceeds from the dinner also went to the Canadian Food Grains Bank to help global hunger relief. Local farmer and event organizer Jason Reed says bringing the community back together, especially for a good cause, is extremely important.
We've been a long time since we've been able to gather like this and really celebrate what it is we do. What it is we do as farmers and as community. We work together to produce this food, and now we're celebrating the bounty of our harvest and God's great blessing on the work that we've done.
A 20-year-old driver has had his license suspended for 30 days and his vehicle impounded for 2 weeks for tailgating an unmarked police vehicle on Saturday evening on Broadway Avenue and then speeding by, reaching 118 kilometers an hour in a 50-kilometer zone. The driver has been ticketed for speeding, stunt driving, and other offenses.
Students at Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School can now hit the ice year-round, thanks to funding from Canadian Tire Jumpstart Charities. A new full-size synthetic outdoor rink is just steps from the doors of the school and means DFC's hockey program can run regardless of the time of year. The new rink was broken in this afternoon with an exhibition game between DFC students and City of Thunder Bay officials. The school has been working with Jumpstart since 2016, with the charity providing students equipment and jerseys over the years. Student Success Program Coordinator Sean Spenrath says this was a game changer for students, given how much the sport means to them.
Just all around the north, hockey is massive, right? Like you have volleyball, you have broomball, and then you have hockey. Those are the three main sports up north, and when these kids come here, it's a little piece of home that they get to play hockey.
Often we hear that transportation becomes a barrier for kids to be able to get to and from an activity. When you can walk out a door, what is this, 25 feet, and you're on a rink, these kids are going to be able to play anytime throughout the day, anytime throughout the year.
If cared for properly, officials say the synthetic surface can last a lifetime.
What a cool story that is. Well, Fiona, it's official. We have those winter-like conditions. It was a chilly one out there today.
Yes, the overnight lows were not extreme by any stretch of the imagination. A low of -6, wind chills of -10. That's actually kind of mild for this time of year, but we didn't warm up very much. Stayed below the freezing mark, -2, and the wind chill still felt like -8, and that was partially due to winds from the northeast off the lake, 20 to 41 kilometers per hour to the west. Fort Frances has had snow most of the day. They're currently at -4, but wind chills make it feel like -11 at this time. Similar temperatures and more snow as you head into Red Lake. They too are experiencing wind chills around -12, -13 or so. Eastward into Sioux Lookout and Armstrong, they're at -6, Greenstone -7. They've had snow for the last couple of hours. The wind chill not quite as brisk. It's feeling like about -10 at this time. Marathon at -6 and Sault Ste. Marie sitting on the freezing mark. They're under mostly cloudy skies at this time. Here in the City of Thunder Bay, it's going to be another relatively mild night. Temperatures we're currently at -3. They're only expected to drop maybe a degree, and wind chills are going to hold steady around -9, with the potential for about 5 centimeters of snow, possibly more overnight. And the reason why we say possibly is there is a system that is tracking not northeast the way they usually do, not even directly east, but more of a southeast direction. So Thunder Bay is just going to be clipped by this system as it slowly moves through the Great Lakes over the next 24 hours. But it could bring snow squalls, and I'll have more details on that later on in the news hour.
Okay, thanks a lot, Fiona. Well, Canadian officials have arrived in Indonesia ahead of the G20 summit, and it didn't take long for the Prime Minister to once again condemn Russia for the invasion in Ukraine and also unveil a new round of sanctions. We'll have all the details as your Monday News Hour continues.
Russia's brutal war in Ukraine is creating food and energy crises. It's disrupting supply chains, raising the cost of living,